Hi, this is Tim of the 1916 Company. Welcome and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, everything you see today is in stock and for sale. So start a conversation with me. Reach out to Team Mosso at the1916company.com for purchase pricing and availability questions. Today, something I've wanted to do for ages, a Moser mono-brand show. So the fun thing about Moser is I have been in the trenches with these guys forever. Since the watch you want era, when we sold no new watches and had no brand relationships, I've always thought Moser was a really cool, accessible, approachable, and soulful. A family-held company out of Schaffhausen, Switzerland, German Switzerland, where not too many watches are made. They've long stood sort of in the shadow of their more famous neighbor, IWC, but the Milan family behind Moser is, they're fun all around. And they've got a sense of humor. If you've looked at their previous stunt watches, you would know that. Plants, Swiss cheese, the unmentionable Swiss icons watch. You don't do stuff like that unless you have a sort of self-effacing humor and humility that's rare in the watch space. So we're starting with a watch that I think represents everything they do so well. This is the Streamliner Flyback from the Streamliner collection, but it's not the one that came out in 2020. That one had a white lacquered logo. This one has the company's latest clear, almost invisible logo. And the idea there is that the design language is so strong between the case, the bracelet, the funky blue fume dial. You know who made this, and I happen to agree. It is a very strong design language. The nice thing about the Streamliner since the beginning is that it's redolent of the 1970s, but you look at it and you see pieces of many watches, and they're beautifully integrated under an original notion of what a modern sports watch should be. So you don't say, oh, that's a Royal Oak, a Nautilus, a Laureato, a 222, an Ingenieur. It's none of those things, and yet it's obviously of the 70s. A really cool watch that I feel is defined by its bracelet, which is seamless, no gaps between the links, no daylight showing. And you can see it's almost got a sort of biomechanoid aesthetic to it. This is almost like the armor of some sort of undersea creature that crawls along the bottom and shakes off assaults from its predators via its chainmail carapace. And you can really see how these link together and how they fold with interior links and exterior links. Just a beautiful execution that feels as good as it looks. It's a 42.6 and it's 14.4 thick. We'll throw it on my 16 centimeter circumference wrist. A really great looking watch. And yes, it's true, the center second's a bit smaller, but this is by no means huge. You can see it's effectively a lugless watch, so I'd recommend this for a wrist of 15 centimeters circumference and up. It actually will fit under most cuffs. It's nicely weighted all the way around, so if you like to wear your watch loose, it's not going to hula hoop there. And you can see that the watch features a fascinating sort of case recess. All Mosers have some sort of sculpted case flank, and it varies from model to model. On the Streamliners, it's a bit of a recess. You can see there's this radial lapping machine grain across the top of the bezel, much like the 70s. We got an off-centered crown, and then we've got a flyback chronograph here, and it's designed to work like a La Manna 5100. It's the Agenggraph from Agenor in there. More on that in a moment. But you can see we have this jumping minutes register here, so 60 minutes radially and 60 seconds radially. And then the dial features this staggered sort of racing dial exterior, as made famous by Omega Speedmasters of the late 60s and 70s. And so the Milan family, Edward and Bertrand, they really love auto racing, and so do I. So that's a lovely note to throw in there. It is something that authentically excites the people behind the watch, and it's a love letter to the racing dials of the 70s. So you got this checkered flag-like pattern, like the flag at the end of a motor race. Now, it's also a flyback, so you can reset it and restart it to time events that occur in rapid succession. We do have loom at the center, the blocks of ceramic called Globalite, and then the dial features a sunburst metallic in blue with lacquer fade to create that sort of blue to black fade. We also have a units per hour tachometric scale outboard, so don't miss that. Check out the boxed and cambered sapphire. Now, what's really fascinating is the go big or go home promise by the brand that this watch, which is 120 meters water resistant, can actually be operated as a chronograph underwater down to the rated depth. That's bold, but hey, if you guys are willing to stand behind it, I'm impressed. Now, the movement's fascinating because at first glance, it looks like a manual wind. In fact, it's got a tungsten rotor under the dial, so you get this big, open, beautiful case back. Twin barrels, column wheel, lateral clutch, 3 hertz beat rate. What's fascinating here is that it's got a really low play, sort of seamless clutch. It's actually micro roller teeth So when you start the chronograph up, there's not the big jump you get with the typical lateral clutch. The column wheel is actually sort of a cam column wheel hybrid, but it's got a super crisp feel. And what's fascinating about the way all of this is decorated and constructed is, having been made in Geneva, it actually does meet the standards for decoration and materials quality to earn the Poinçon de Genève, the Geneva hallmark. And so it actually is of that quality. If they were to submit a homologation example, they could actually get the seal. Now, the watch itself, of course, is made in Schaffhausen, so it's a German-Swiss watch with a French-Swiss movement, and very, very cool. It's not the only Moser chronograph on the desk, and that's a surprise because for years and years, since the 2005 refounding of the brand, chronographs were not a big part of what they did. They were seldom seen. And so what we've got here is two on the same table, and I think this one's probably a little bit more my speed. This is a 2024 collaboration for the 2025 model year. It's the H.Moser and Cie Massena Lab collaboration called the Endeavour Compax Chronograph, and it's based on the design of Moser chronographs from the 40s. So you can see it's got the period Moser logo on there, and then also it's got a kilometer scale for the tachymetric scale outboard. And if you take a quick look here, you can see that it's a remarkably loomed watch with everything that's supposed to be loomed and then some more on top of that. So that is a circular supernova. The timepiece also features the same funky blue dial, but now in the Endeavour case. And the great thing about the Endeavour case is how beautifully sculpted it is. Moser cases are machined and then hand finished, and you really do need the two steps to be able to get this degree of concave and polish. There's differential finish with satin and polish. This is a 100-piece edition in steel 41, and then you could throw it on the wrist, and it's got a really good feel because the lugs are short and downturned, almost down 90 degrees from the horizontal of the case band. And it's got a great look, a great feel. It's fairly flat. It's just over 13 millimeters. And you can see that on my 16 centimeter circumference wrist, I would say it wears about the same as the Streamliner. The Streamliner is a lugless watch, so it wears a bit differently. But this is definitely the way to go if you want something that's vintage, but maybe not quite the wire lug style officer's watch, vintage of the Heritage line. A lovely minimally tanned rustic leather strap, aviator style. And then we've got a simple pin buckle and steel to match the watch. So it's a HMC 200 base with the Dubois de Praz vertical clutch chronograph module. And so we've got a free sprung balance, a full balance bridge, a 3 hertz beat rate, a 3-day power reserve, ceramic ball bearings, bidirectional winding via a magic lever style pawl-based system, and it's a large movement to fill a big case back. Not only does Moser make the movement, they make the balance, the hairspring, and the escapement through Precision Engineering, their subsidiary. So they also make the relatively hard to do parts of the movement, the oscillator and the assortment. You can see here, because this is a vertical clutch chronograph, we have an absolutely seamless chronograph engagement. And because it's a Moser HMC 200 base, we also have hacking seconds. Really cool watch. For me, this might be the pick of the litter, but I've got two contenders for my personal favorite. We're going to talk about right now a watch I actually own. So this is a watch that I actually wear frequently. This is the Moser Pioneer Center Second Cosmic Green in 40 millimeters. So the Pioneer first came out in precious metal in 2015. It was the first real water-resistant Moser sports watch, but that was 42.8 millimeters. In 2023, they finally came out with a 40 millimeter version, and by then they were also doing base metal. So this is steel, 40 millimeters. It has a lug-to-lug span of 48 millimeters. It wears quite nicely, and it's a little bit over 12 millimeters thick, so it's reasonably slim. When you put it on the wrist, it's great for smaller wrists. If you're a lady and you're looking for a Moser sports watch that's a bit more viable on a small wrist, that's definitely the way to go. If you want a watch that's sporty, 120 meters, water resistant, but it'll fit under a cuff, again, this is the way to go. We're talking about modern Moser dials now. This Cosmic Green with the clear lacquer came out in 2024. So the Cosmic Green in the 40 with the clear lacquer came out last year, and now that is something you can get if you want to have a more discreet brand but a more expressive watch in a smaller package. And it's got a little bit more lume than the Streamliner, so we do actually have hours here, which makes it a bit more intuitive. You can see here the Moser case band is defined by recesses that are coined, so it's very different. And then we have satination on top of the lugs with a little bit of a crease down their center, so attention to detail. Media blasted Moser crown, a lovely Moser vented strap, and at Moser in general, the buckle will match the design of the watch. So you can see there's coining on the buckle, and then there's coining on the case. Whereas here we have a more conventional Endeavour case and a more conventional buckle. And we're going to jump and take a look at some others fairly soon, but you'll see what I mean there. Now, Moser has also updated its HMC 200 movement. A few changes. First, now we have a skeletonized rotor, so blocking less of the view. It was always a little bit of a semi-skeletonized rotor, but now it's really been opened up. You can also see the bridges themselves have been opened up. So you can see the drivetrain and you can see the winding train. We'll remove this little piece of tape or adhesive from the back there. Also, there's now a nickel anthracite coating rather than a conventional silverish Swiss rhodium plate. We also have little gold gilded wells for the jewels to give them the look of a vintage Moser pocket watch with golden chaton jewel settings. And of course, Moser's double-crested Côte de Genève stay, those have always been a distinctive feature of their finishing. So with the skeletonization, the nickel anthracite, the gilding of the jewel sinks, it looks really nice. Still 3 days, still 3 hertz, still stop seconds, full bridge, free sprung for shock resistance, still with the pawl-based magic lever winding system. But now, if you look very carefully through the bridge here, you can actually see the pawls and the pawl wheel right there. Just a great looking movement that's properly sized for the case, and a great all-around watch that's very versatile. You can wear this anytime. If you want something that's maybe a bit more formal but also a lot more exotic, then we need to talk about the Endeavour Tourbillon Concept Aventurine. So this here is a nice compact, roughly 40 millimeter case, and Moser cases are sometimes fractions of a millimeter in between standard sizing, so keep in mind this is around 40. It is thin, and you can see some of the virtues of the Moser case design with those deeply sculpted hollows with mirror finish, the concave bezel all around to visually pair the mass, and then an aventurine glass dial. So aventurine glass is a type of vitreous enamel that's a very dark blue and translucent with metallic elements in it, and this is something that was originally developed by Italian jewelers, probably in Florence during the late Renaissance. And so this sort of aventurine glass, it's not aventurine stone, it is an enamel, and it has this wondrous sort of infinite depth to it. Also, taking a quick look, you can see that we've got a flying tourbillon with 2 hairsprings. A flying tourbillon has no upper bridge to block your view, so that's what we have here. And then you can see that there are 2 hairsprings, they're 180 degrees apart, but they're otherwise identical in every way, and they're free sprung, so a concussion to the watch can't change the timing. By placing the hairsprings 180 degrees apart, when one is caused to run fast by gravity, the other by an equal and opposite margin will be caused to run slowly. And so in any position, this double hairspring arrangement cancels out the effect of gravity. Out back, you can see now we have a little bit more of a deluxe execution on this movement. Still a 3-day power reserve, but now you can see that the base of the tourbillon sits on ceramic bearings rather than a conventional pivot. We now have a rose gold rotor rather than tungsten, and rather than having gilded jewel sinks that look like golden chaton here, you can see we actually have a real one fixed by screws, another nod to the pocket watch era. 50 pieces, a limited edition, and a beautiful homage to the craft arts. You can see this one has a rare feature for a Moser watch, which is a full deployment clasp. This is usually an upcharge option, and it is in white gold like the watch. They use gray gold, which is the good kind of white gold, the kind that's white all the way through and never needs to be plated. This is going to be a slimmer look on the wrist. It really fits easily under cuff. It's also shorter across the wrist. A really cool watch that on every level is just a lot of fun to experience, and with the dark dial and the white metal case, even though yes, it is a dress watch, and yes, it is made of precious metal, this is still a watch that you can wear casually with short sleeves and short pants and not feel like you're overgunned for the attire. This is a really good and versatile watch that'll dress up or down as you please. And you can see this is what Moser calls a concept dial, where there's absolutely nothing. No statement of Swiss origin, no branding, no indices, nothing. Now you may ask, why not write Swiss made on the dial? Well, Swiss made is a 60% standard, more or less. Moser likes to say that 90 to 100% of its watches are made in Switzerland, so they don't want the inferior standard or the inferior signage on the dial. And it's hard to argue with them. They make very few watches with more than 5% non-Swiss content. Here we have a lovely strap. You can see this is a Moser factory strap. Black calfskin on the bottom, high gloss, almost gloss ultramarine, or maybe even a sort of dark cobalt with a lightly contrasting blue stitch, alligator leather. Okay, we're going to explore the whole notion of the concept dial a little bit deeper here. And this is one of my favorites. This came out in 2022, and it's in stainless steel because one of the innovations really over the last half decade of Moser watchmaking has been more base metal watches. So you don't have to pay for precious metal, but you can get the watchmaking and the style. Now this does have precious metal, but inside, not outside. You can see this is the Endeavour center second concept lime green enamel. So we've got a dial of hammered style white gold, and then 3 different enamel pigments used on the top to create this gradient fade, and 12 firings at 800 degrees centigrade to turn this glass-covered gold dial into what you see here. Laborious and repetitive, yes. And yes, enamel does occasionally pop, crack, fracture, or explode, but they managed to get this together so that it is flawless. It is nicely shaded, it is uniform from side to side, and you have that lovely texture beneath. You can also see it is a concept dial. No branding, no statement of origin, no indices. But also take a look at this fired violet steel hand at center. That is a key that something special lies within. And that special feature is the same double hairspring you saw on the Tourbillon, and it serves the exact same purpose here. The Tourbillon on the Flying Tourbillon with the Aventurine dial, that is purely there for aesthetics. It is the free-sprung double hairspring arrangement that's doing all the heavy lifting to cancel out gravity. And so we have that here. And that's what the blue balance bridge signifies. Again, a premium watch with the rose gold rotor. This one's nice and thin. It's got a lovely slender look on the wrist. This is the best fit of any of the watches you've seen yet. And you can see one of the distinctive traits of Moser watches. They use these very minimally tanned leather straps, often in the material you see right here, which is kudu leather. And so this is a kudu leather strap in gray, a steel case, 40 millimeters, a gold dial, hammered style, with 3 pigments and 12 different applications of enamel grand faux. 3-day power reserve, double hairspring. It does feature hacking seconds. A superb watch on every level, and one that, kind of like the Aventurine Tourbillon, is also very kind to a smaller wrist, a very viable unisex option. We also have a Endeavour in 37 millimeters if you want to go even smaller with a Lagoon style blue dial. Okay, if you want to go bigger though, we also have this. This is another 2022 launch. This one's very special. This is the Pioneer Cylindrical Tourbillon Skeleton. So what's going on here is Moser is really playing up its competence as a creator of hairsprings. So John Arnold, famously, the helical hairspring in the 18th century, and famously used on many, many, many marine chronometers, because even more than a standard overcoil, a double overcoil cylindrical hairspring has even better isochronous properties and immunity to gravitationally induced timing deviation. It's still a flying tourbillon, so you can see it's got this wonderful bridgeless top, so no part of the view is blocked. It's still free sprung with all the adjustments done using variable inertia screws on the balance. It beats away at 3 Hertz. And if you look at the tourbillon cage itself, you can see that between the anglage and the satination, this is the most intricately and finely finished part of the whole movement. And Moser making the balance, the hairspring, and the escapement in-house through precision engineering. We have this incredible convex gradient fade metallic sunburst funky blue dial with solid blocks of Globalite ceramic lume. And then you can see underlying mechanisms like over here, the keyless works with the clutch spring, the winding pinion, the crown wheel. And you can see how once I screw this out, this is 120 meters water resistant like the other Pioneers. This 42.8 millimeter steel watch has visible keyless works operation in there, where you could see the clutch in action, you could see the winding pinion in action, you could see the crown wheel meshing with the intermediate wheel to drive the motion works that turns the hand. A really good look. Nickel anthracite coated bridges. You can see they're going with a different kind of look, satination on the bridges, and then beveling on the edges right there. Screw heads are black polished. We'll turn it over. HMC 811 movement, I believe is what they call this right here. 74-hour power reserve, yes, 2 more than their standard automatic. And you can see now everything's been opened up and skeletonized, and you can see the mainspring. And as the mainspring coils more tightly, it'll actually coil around the arbor at the center. So a very tightly packed mainspring is a very highly wound mainspring. You can see here the attention to detail, the difference in tone between the crown wheel and the crown wheel core. And once again, we have little elements of detail that are much appreciated. I particularly like the sunburst over the ball bearing. And then you can see on the back here, a combination of brushed finishing, but also, if you look along the edge, there's media blast. Excellent attention to detail here. We have more of a nubuck, sort of velvety-like alligator leather, and then on the wrist, 42.8 millimeters. It's not small, but it's also not so huge that I couldn't wear it. So if your wrist is my size or larger, 16 centimeters circumference and up, you're going to find this is a really good match. Also, it's not very heavy. There's something about this watch that makes it feel a lot lighter than the other Streamliners and Pioneers. This feels like one of their lightest full-size sports watches. And again, because the buckle often does match the case, you have that serration or coining to match the coining of the case flank. I'll do a quick loom shot so you can see this one in the dark. And those three-dimensional blocks of loom do a lot of work here. Okay, so this is the Endeavour Tourbillon Concept Vantablack Black Hands. So this is DLC stainless steel, 41.9 millimeters, a 50-piece limited edition from 5 years ago. And you can see on the back, it's got a lot of those features we discussed earlier on the more upscale 3-day automatics, including that golden chaton and the rose gold rotor. But we flip back to the dial side now, and there is a lot of dust because unfortunately Vantablack is the darkest, least reflective material where light is concerned in anything. Any glare, any speck of dust is visible on the crystal. So this is Vantablack. These are vertically arrayed carbon nanotubes, and they reflect less light than any other known material, 99.965% of light. It is as black gets. Now, we also have black hands, a concept dial, because again, no branding and no indices. We have the Flying Tourbillon again. They've gone with a little bit of a anthracite coating to make it darker and better match the dial. Double hairspring, again, a 1-minute tourbillon that also acts as the second sand of the watch. And then under here we have this wonderful Alcantara material, which is similar to what you'd find on the touch points of a really expensive car. Think Rolls-Royce headliner, think some sort of low-volume Koenigsegg or Pagani. This is what's going to be on your steering wheel or your shift lever. And then on the top, a much more adult, large rectangular scale alligator leather with, yet again, a feature that's rare on Moser watches. Not just a deployant clasp here, but you can see this is actually a double deployant clasp with trigger release. So a nice piece and something that gives you an awful lot of flexibility to avoid dropping the watch when you are donning or removing it at bedside. So this is a watch that wears nice, compact, flat, but also very stark, as there's simply no missing the fact that you're wearing something that is as black as the night. A lot of folks will ask, can you tell the time? And well, yes, of course you can. I mean, it's easy enough to see. But this is one of those watches that leads with style, something Moser's never been afraid to do, unbranded and really unabashed about it. This is a watch that is all about, I suppose, starting a conversation. That's how I describe it. When people ask about the practicality of a watch that requires effort to see, mention that you buy a mechanical watch precisely to engage more directly and more extensively with your watch. It's sort of part of the meta of the watch collector scene these days. The more you engage with your watch, the more analog, traditional, and anachronistic it is. The less you engage with your watch, typically the more Apple Watch it is. Okay, so now here's another watch that I consider a candidate for my favorite watch in this episode because it pegs the meter in every way. And my favorite Moser model has traditionally been the Endeavour Perpetual, which is exactly what this is. But this is no mean Endeavour Perpetual. This is the Endeavour Perpetual Tantalum Ruby Dial. Yes, Ruby Dial. Raw ruby stone, so no two of the limited edition of 10 are exactly alike. It is a perpetual calendar using the bidirectionally settable perpetual calendar system created for Moser by watchmaking great Andreas Streller, who focuses on making complications practical and cloaking their complexity in simplicity. So the way this works, and let's just go over the geography of what we've got here. It's a 42 millimeter in tantalum. The bezel and the case are tantalum, which is an alluring blue-gray metal that in watchmaking grade is actually a little bit heavier than 18 karat watchmaking gold. And not only here do we have the concave bezel and the scalloped lug profiles that you saw in the other Endeavours, here we get the full fat Endeavour case where it actually widens at 12 o'clock and 6 o'clock, so it flows like molten metal, and the underside and the case back sapphire are both curved to match the articulation and arc of your wrist. Now, the way this is laid out is we have our seconds, we have our minutes, our hours, and then there's a stub hand for the perpetual calendar. 12 months corresponding to 12 hours. So you're pointing down to 6, and it says 26, so this is June 26. There's a power reserve indicator over at 9 o'clock, twin barrel movement, and with twin barrels, they actually rate it 7 days, but that's the chronometric power reserve. It will run for almost 9 before it actually stops. So when we set the perpetual calendar, Andreas Streller was a smart guy. He realized that you could pull the crown out and accidentally stop the watch when you're just trying to set the date and the month. And that would desynchronize the watch because presumably you being a stickler for chronometry, you would have set your watch to the second against a reference time, and pulling the crown out all the way and hacking the seconds would have created an unacceptable deviation. So the way this works is you can't actually pull the crown all the way out to hacking seconds. You pull it out once and it stops, and it will block you from going out to hacking. And now in this position, you can set the calendar system. You pull again, and now if you look at the seconds hand, it hacks the watch. So it is a double pull system to safeguard precisely set time when you're looking to set the calendar. Now there is something that people often mistake when watching videos of these. They'll think that it's broken because typically when you're turning it backwards, you will find that it actually changes on the 28th rather than the 30th or the 31st for a month that is not February. Well, the bottom line is it only does that when you're backing up. Typically, what you're supposed to do here is you're supposed to advance through months, and then if you need to back up a little, back up within a month. It will always advance correctly when you are turning it forward. And it's important to note that unlike the bidirectional perpetual from Ulysse Nardin, for example, this can actually be set any time of day without hazard of damaging the mechanism. Now, turning it all over, you can see the Moser 800 series base is very involved. 2 barrels. It is stop seconds. It is 18,000 vibrations per hour. It is a solid gold escapement, 14 karat, to better reflect low friction engineering principles, because 14 karat gold is mechanical grade gold that can be used to reduce the amount of lubrication necessary on the escapement. You'll also note that it's a free sprung full balance bridge for robust shock resistance. Streller was a smart man. He realized you didn't need to see the leap year cycle of the perpetual calendar all the time. So you adjust it with this little button on the side, and the indication is on the case back, and this little gold index indicates what phase of the 4-year cycle you're in. Now this is where things get kind of crazy. This entire escapement and balance lifts out as a unit. So when it goes back to service at Moser regionally, and they do have regional service for Asia, Europe, the United States, and the Western Hemisphere, this whole unit, which has been pre-serviced and pre-adjusted, the old one will go out, the new one will be put in, speeding the watch back to you faster. Another thing that's interesting, on this special tantalum perpetual with the ruby dial, you'll note the use of a genuine diamond capstone atop the balance. So these rubies are synthetic, but the diamond is real. You'll also note that Moser gave you a lot more golden chaton on this movement than you'll find even on the others. So you have many golden chaton cups fixed by black polished screws. You can see better that Moser double-crested Côte de Genève, the Moser stripes as they call them, that I mentioned earlier, a pocket watch-inspired swan's neck click spring, and then also bridges that, although split for easier servicing, they're designed to be read like a 3/4 bridge, as you would find on a vintage Moser pocket watch. Throwing it on the wrist, it's an easy fit. It's about 48 millimeters lug to lug, and the curved case back really mitigates any fit issues. I'd recommend this watch for wrists my size or larger, and believe me, I would love to add one of these to my collection. I also like the hammered blue enamel dial version, so I'm not quite decided there, but this is a watch that would look awesome on my wrist, and I'm absolutely in love with perpetual calendars, which are a sort of mechanical computer, something that you rarely see these days. If you like any of these watches, please reach out to me. I love to talk Moser. Team Mosso at the 1916company.com for purchase and pricing details.